People who have been on the deep web. What's the scariest thing you've found?
Silent scan.
I remember a long time ago there was a guy online that was trying to buy large quantities of bedbugs. When questioned why he wanted them, he basically said that he wanted to try to breed them to be resistant to normal methods of killing them, while simultaneously breeding in a weakness that only he knew. This way he could release them in people's houses, and then force them to pay him to get rid of the bedbugs, since no one else would be able to kill them.
Silent scan.
My own password. Found a chant that had a link to a website. That when you put in an email address, it would show you the password in plain text if that email address had been pawned. Typed in one of my old .now closed emails. And there it was. Just a blank page with my email address and password on it. Sitting right there for anybody to find.
Silent scan.
A friend of mine claims he was snooping around where he didn't belong. Black market forums and hacking forums. When someone private messaged him basically saying, "I've looked into you because I see you in here a lot, and I know you're not here to buy or use the services, because you're just a kid. I don't mind, but others will, and you haven't protected yourself well enough to be here. Get off if you know what's good for you." This would have me disconnecting my computer, throwing it in the bin and going to sleep with the lights on.
Silent scan.
Well, when I visited, I mostly visited the hacking cybersecurity part. Interesting to see how people go about hacking various things, and really educational. Yes, there are people buying, selling 0 days, etc., but it's mostly social engineering. Anyway, the scariest was a hacking advertising a service, where he was willing to upload child porn onto someone's computer and report him to the police, as a form of taking someone out. Well, actually the scariest part was discovering that there were at least 2 people in the chat room that I was in discussing about kernel security who had used that service. I decided to stick to more regular forums afterwards.
Silent scan.
I wandered around in the dark stuff about 10 years ago. Worst I saw was basically the Super Adventure Club from South Park. A bunch of rich people on a forum, discussing the best ways to abduct children from different parts of the world, the different kinds of kids they owned, how to keep them hidden and healthy, how young is too young for different XX, etc. Made me depressed for a few months. And I was pretty fed up for a few years after. I removed Tor from my computer that day and haven't installed it since. I'm happier not knowing how awful humanity can be.
Silent scan.
Someone asked this question a while ago. One single reply stood out to me. They were a blogger for dark web stuff and actually met the king of the P2 empire. I forgot the guy's name, he was like a 22-year-old Australian or something. Anyway, she said, the scariest thing about him wasn't his appearance. It's how absolutely normal he looked. This was a kid who single-handedly ran the biggest underground kid porn operation, and he looked like a regular Starbucks customer. I paraphrased. But this should sound familiar to a bunch of you. The case was interesting because the kid argued that he himself never actually harmed or filmed any children being harmed, and never actually touched or actually filmed any child himself. Look up stuff about Daisy's destruction if you're more curious. I haven't and heard it's pretty gruesome, but that Google should put you on the right track to learn more about this story.
Silent scan.
Someone showed me this website once where it was like a stream feed aggregation on these pages. And there were hundreds of pages, and each page had probably 50 streams on it. They were all feeds from do-it-yourself security cameras that people have in their homes that back up to the cloud. So crazy to see. These people probably have no idea.
Silent scan.
While randomly clicking around Tor one night, I found a site with a riddle and a text box to enter an answer. After figuring it out, it took me to another page that had a message to decode and another text box. Basically every page was a puzzle and got harder every time. I was 15 and not very smart with those kinds of things, so I found a forum where other people had discovered the site and were talking about it. Apparently on the final page it just displayed a date and a quote from Alice in Wonderland. I believe it was just a site made to be some sort of entertainment for very experienced decoders and programmers. But there was speculation that it was a hacker recruiting site similar to Cicada 3301. Either way, it creeped me out a lot. I saw that. It was a pig's head, Wonderland quote and some creepy music. There was more going on. Metadata and images at dot which showed another level with a timer yerk. But it seemed like it was just some guy LARPing. Also snap on the age thing.
Silent scan.
I used to take pictures of drugs for a local Silk Road dealer. I was over his house once and he was testing out some onion links. And he suddenly said DatoH, my god. Look at this. It was a site where a guy in America would FK the corpses of dead animals and post his experiences with graphic pictures and descriptions. If you scrolled a bit further, you saw he moved on to humans. I walked away from the computer pretty quickly.
Silent scan.
The deep web is largely not a scary place unless you really go digging for things. Child porn, human trafficking, etc. will not likely be openly available to you without some effort, because it would be more likely to be shut down. All that I've really seen is lots of drugs, stolen goods, counterfeits, guns, etc.
Silent scan.
I got really curious one weekend and set out to see what's been being kept from me. It's both full of interesting and dark shit, but it's mostly crap and crap I don't want to be a part of. Some things I had ran across or found sites for: drugs, weapons and counterfeit money deliveries. A hitman who only took cryptocurrencies and would only do adults. I didn't see prices, but he said it could take around a month for him to find and execute in a safe for him way. He said he'd prefer you don't do people you know though. But like what's the point then? There was quite a bit about if you really want him to do a kid it's gotta be for a specific reason, and usually you'd have to pay for the parent as well. But the gist seemed to be like, I don't want to. But if you need it give me a shit ton of money. A credit card swapping website. And a credit card buying website. Counterfeit pay card website. This is the one that got me the most interested. Essentially they use spoofing VPN and stolen credit card numbers to buy or fake a bunch of prepaid pay cards. Then they sell those at like 60% the value or something. I couldn't verify the validity of it, so meh. Part of all kinds. It's not really something you can stumble into though, typically the direct links are pretty hitting. I didn't go looking for it, but you get a sense of where you can ask for what. And a trading repository. Like what the fappening was referring to. You essentially trade famous unleaked nudes for others. I had nothing, so it was essentially a strange Craigslist of like, I need pics of line. I have pics of line and line unleaked I can trade. The guy who you tell him something you want and he'd go steal it from the store and sell it to you for like half the cost. It's an interesting business. Human trafficking. I never went to the sites, but I found a link to one. I just assumed it was something I wouldn't want to see and didn't bother fact-checking. Basically, unless you're a depraved person, it's a huge waste of time and a glimpse into the worst part of people. Added. To preempt anyone, no, I don't have any Onion links to any of these. I just use wikis and the Onion message boards and felt myself around.
Silent scan.
High-quality counterfeit Magic the Gathering cards years before the general public realized these things were running around. Back then they were still higher quality than even what's available now. They were also all targeted at the mid-tier card prices. Not the big-name stuff like Duels and Power. The sorts of things no one ever thought to check.
Silent scan.
The only experience I've had is some random email I got saying my information was being sold there. Sure enough, my Uber account was hacked into, and people from Germany and Australia used it to buy $400 in food. Uber's response: it's your own fault for using a password you may have used elsewhere. I didn't. I had my account on Uber all of 4 days. Took me 3 weeks to get my money back thanks to PayPal and my bank. Never used Uber again. Never will. I'm positive my driver sold my information after I signed up. I only got one ride. My Netflix was hacked in Russia. I cancelled my credit card connected with the account. Alerted Netflix. Changed my passwords.
Silent scan.
I found a guy who lived in a house in the middle of nowhere who had his sister locked up in his house and would rent her out to people. I noped out of there pretty fast. I didn't know what authority to even tell, and I assumed if I could find it, so could they. They at the time told me everything on the darknet is untraceable, and I believed them. See, I didn't want to explain what it was to my parents. And I was afraid of being affiliated to this place in any way now that my IP was seen accessing the site. I just wanted to leave and delete Tor.
Silent scan.
I think this was in 2012 or whenever the Silk Road was at its peak. A friend had told me he ordered some MDMA off of it and actually received the package in the mail. I had him show me how he used the program. Tor. I'm bad at computers, so I'm not sure if it is a program or not. And we spent the better part of an afternoon marveling at all the stuff you could buy. Eventually we came across someone who was selling children. The offer was you would list the characteristics of the child you want. And depending on the difficulty of acquiring that type of child, pay somewhere around 5 to 50k and have the child sent to you. There were pictures of ones he had in stock where they mostly end cat in a dirty room. Or he could go find the certain one you wanted and take it. We turned off the computer and didn't get back on for a few days. I wish I had called the police. But we were stupid kids and scared of getting in trouble for my buddy's drugs.
Silent scan.
Back in 2015 with the Charleston shooting, there were many news reports on Dylan Roof's white supremacist website and the pictures that he posted. Being oddly curious, I decided to check it out. Since the website was already taken down in wake of the incident, I had to use Wayback Machine. However, all of the caches of the website lead to a photo of an unconscious man lying on the floor with blood spilling out of his head. I found none of the pictures shown in the news reports.
Silent scan.
The mother and father pushing their 8 to 10-year-old daughter into having sex with them.
Silent scan.
When I was about 12 to 13, I used to browse through Tor all night and just scroll through whatever my naive SS could find. Aside from the usual gore and CP that was floating around. I saw this one page that still haunts me now. This guy ran an animal sanctuary out in Colorado with a bunch of different exotic animals. He would essentially rent them out to people who were into bestiality. Some of those animals looked so miserable, malnourished and chained up in the photos. I didn't even know what to do with that info at that age, and just remember having nightmares about those animals.
Silent scan.